It was 23 days in Antarctica, and there's the crazy Drake Passage, just some of the roughest waters on the planet, can be very dangerous. The morning after a crazy night, I'm up on the captain's bridge, and the captain turns around and looks at me and he's like, "Hey, I saw you last night." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Yeah, it was like 3 a.m. and I saw you standing outside the bridge, like staring into the window. It was kind of creepy." I had no idea what you're talking about, my friend. What are you talking about? And he said, "You then left the bridge and you went down to the bow, the very point of the ship, and you were looking over the edge, and all of a sudden a big wave came and kind of sprayed you. And I was about to like send someone down to rescue you, and you just went back inside and I didn't see you the rest of the time." I have a history of narcolepsy, especially if I'm hopped up on like Dramamine, and like, long story short, turns out I slept walk that night. My wife was not happy about it. She spent the rest of the trip putting like these metal water bottles lining our doors so that they would like cling and wake her up if I did it again.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast, episode 26, bonus episode, final episode of season 1. Let me begin by saying thank you. Thank you so much for giving it a shot, checking it out, sharing it with a friend. Let Me Save You 25 Years is in the top 100 podcasts in the world, top 10 business podcasts, sometimes number 1 in entrepreneurship week by week, thanks to your support. No advertisers. Just doing this for the pure content. And we've already begun recording season 2, so stay tuned. If you can believe it, we've got 25 more Shawnisms to unpack. Yep, 25 more where those came from, in great depth with highly successful people each week, coming at you very soon. This week, we have the unique opportunity to unpack really Shawnism number 0. This is, if you've read the book, Let Me Save You 25 Years, in the preface, I share a personal story, a turning point in my life when I was just 13 years old. And I realized I was like a total idiot and egotistical prick, even at 13. And I learned, for myself anyway, the hard lesson that love matters. So as basic as that sounds, and of course, putting a bow on it, 25 years later, having built a brand that will become an international brand, I think a very big brand, it's on its way, around the word love. Love is in our name. Love is over our doors. Love is plastered on our chests, on our t-shirts. I've always said to our team, we can't wear this word on our chest and then be a bunch of jerks. And who better to unpack this with than a person who I think exudes it more naturally, a person who has himself international acclaim for his family-oriented, gentle, beautiful ways. Garrett Gee from the Bucket List family. If you don't follow the Bucket List family online, oh my gosh, they travel the world and they photograph their whole life. They're raising their children in front of us and they share it all with us, really generous with their privacy, generous with their time, generous with their love. To sum it up in maybe more businessy terms, I will read you straight from Lovesack's own strategic guide that's been with us for a decade and really been a big part of, I think, our success for this last decade, where we've grown the company, from obscurity to getting, bumping up against $1 billion in sales, et cetera. We have these 5 guiding principles, and number 5 of 5 is love matters. And the subtext there reads, love is the name we live up to. We champion building long-term relationships with customers, of course, but also with each other and everyone the business impacts. We seek to promote love and happiness in all we do while having a damn good time along the way. Any other outcome is just not worth it. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Garrett Gee of the Bucket List family, and you find, as I have, even in business, that love matters. It is, for many, some kind of dream to create a product, build a company around it, sell it to a mega tech firm for a good outcome. The next step would, of course, be to build the huge house, fancy cars, or maybe put everything into doing it again, building something even bigger. Or maybe there's a whole different way to do it. This guy has done it all. Successful education, service missionary, captain in collegiate sports, an amazing family, including 3 amazing kids, amazing wife along the way. Only ironically, after selling his app to Snapchat, he and his amazing wife decided to spend the balance of their lives, beginning at a pretty young age, checking off all those bucket list items that most people wait until they're retired to do, if they ever get to do it at all. He's visited more than 220 countries, every continent, and done it all with his beautiful wife and children in tow. Congratulations for winning life. And thank you for coming on the pod to share a bit of wisdom with us from YouTube's famous The Bucket List family, Mr. Garrett Gee.
That was epic, man. Man, I appreciate that. I hope there's like big, loud music, walk on music. Actually, you know what I listened to while I was getting ready this morning? Have you ever heard a song, Billy Joel, Everybody Has a Dream?
What?
That's what I was getting ready to this morning.
Did you listen to it?
I did, yeah. It's a great song. I'm a big fan of Billy Joel, maybe a little bit before my time because I had not heard that specific song. And so I enjoyed it.
That is the kind and gentle Garrett calling me old. But Billy Joel. So actually, thank you for bringing that up. Referencing the introduction to my book, Let Me Save You 25 Years, where I talk about this moment I had right when I was like 13 years old. There was like a turning point in my young life, and tease up this Billy Joel was playing on my.
You did a great job. That moment when you're looking out the window, you're living your own music video, and so when you mentioned that song, I was like, I got to hear this song. So I listened to it this morning. I've had many of those moments in my life as well, where a special, big, impactful moment happens, and I can recall the exact song that was playing. I mean, that's led to a lot of the way I do our YouTube channel. Is so much of it is trying to pick the right song that best represents the memory so that I can forever remember, not just the moment, but like the vibe and the feeling around it. And music does such a great job at that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. That's cool. I was just thinking as you were saying that, like, because as we all know, like the olfactory gland is so linked to memory. I wonder if there's like a future state where you can think about smells like in like a 4D like AI world that we're all going to live in. But yeah, music, man. So the phrase that we're going to talk about, love matters, comes from that moment where I realized I was at 13, at the tender age of 13, I was already like a cocky prick and needed some humbling. And but you know, it's stuck with me my whole life, and I've tried to live up to it, integrate it into my company. I mean, I'm so proud that we get to have the ticker on Wall Street, LOVE, which was a coup to get. There's a whole story behind that. And we get to represent it with our name and on our t-shirts. And, you know, we kind of sneak it in there because you attach SAC to it, and then it's not cheesy and it's not silly. I mean, it's goofy and weird, but it kind of lets it go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's been a really successful way to get love out there in the world, you know?
Yeah, I love it. I appreciate it. I was going to bring up, I mean, Lovesac, at least where I grew up, all the best households had a big old Lovesac,
right,
you know, in their movie room. And I'm pretty sure I could credit Lovesac for my first kiss. So yeah, thank you for that.
Heck yeah. Yeah. I think you wouldn't be alone. I occasionally I'll meet someone like, and they'll hear Lovesac and they'll get a big smile, and I'll have to add like, oh, you know, Lovesac.
You know, there's stories and memories there.
Oh yeah. In fact, one of my friends goes even further. And in fact, he finally told his adult daughter that these are close friends of ours, from a very young age, they used to call me the Godfather. Anyway, there's a whole story behind that. But we used to joke about having a Godfather, club for children fostered on the sack. Yeah. But that's a whole different level. But yes, in college, I mean, that's pretty much where Lovesac was born. It was born as my college career. And what's funny, Garrett, because, you know, we're both people of faith. We're both, you know, returned missionaries, all this, you know, like Lovesac's always been this sort of like, can perceive sometimes as like a risque brand or whatever. And, you know, it's got a secret pocket in it just because it's funny under the logo flap. And people would always be like, oh, is that where you hide your weed? I'm like, man, if you only knew. I'm like, a married monogamous kid from Utah with this
Yeah.
brand that people think is like, whatever, risque, whatever.
That's really awesome.
Pretty harmless in the end. All right. So, love matters, Garrett. So I've been dying to ask you. So before I have a few questions that I've been dying to ask you, but before I get into those, when you first heard the topic, what was the first thing that came to mind without thinking too hard?
Honestly, just the importance of it and the truth of it. Especially, I appreciated that you brought it up in your book at when it occurred to you at such a young age, because I mean, I think everybody learns that lesson in life. It's just a matter of when, and the earlier you
Mm.
can learn that lesson, just makes all the difference. I think, unfortunately, for people, and I'd even put myself in this group, people who don't learn it till later in life have looked back with a lot of regret to the years they didn't live with just full love and kindness and empathy for other people. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciated that when you brought it up in your book, it was at such a young age.
Well, in fairness, I learned the lesson at a young age, but I continue to spend my life trying to live up to it. I look, it's weird. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm hard charging. I'm ambitious. I can run over people just in my pursuit of getting things done, unintentionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to really work to try to exude that. So I'm curious for you. You strike me. We've hung out only a couple times or whatever, but like you strike me as of course there's so much footage of you and your family as a really gentle person. I'm curious, like, does the ability to exude love and to be a loving person come naturally to you? How do you feel about that?
Oh goodness, really, really great question. You know what I would say is, if there's maybe like a special skill, and I don't know myself whether I was born with it or if I learned it over time, but something that I feel like I do have, and I would honestly consider it a secret power because it like to the level that it's ingrained in me, is the ability to see the potential in everyone I meet, everyone I come across. And there's good and bad to that. I'd say the good to it is immediately when I meet someone, because I see them at such a high level, either equal to me or better than me. It just fills me with love and respect and admiration for that person. The downside to it is sometimes it's got me in trouble where people put me up on a pedestal or hold me up to a level, and because I think everyone is at that same level or higher than me, then I hold them up to really high expectations. So, I mean, speaking of entrepreneurial ventures and businesses, when I hire someone, I hold them at just the highest standard, and I expect
Mm.
and demand a lot out of them. And it's not because I'm a demanding person. It's because not only do I hold myself at such a high level, but when I see so much potential in them, I just want the most for them. And so if somebody in my life isn't like doing the absolute best that they can, it breaks my heart for them. And I just want more and more and more for them. But I say that's the downside of that is I think sometimes I can be a lot to be connected with or work with or have a relationship with just because of that high expectation.
Because you actually in practice are very demanding is what it sounds like. Not in like a overt way, but in a consequential way, I guess.
And it's just kind of like, look, let's get the most out of life, the most out of me, the most out of you, the most that life can provide. There's so much more that we're capable of, that life is capable of. Let's go for it together. And I believe in myself and I believe in you. So it's a lot. It's a very high expectation on all fronts.
Yeah, that's an interesting corollary to where we started, right? With this phrase "love matters," to take it to, uh, and it's interesting because you really get there by focusing first on like you have first of all self-respect, you have confidence, um, you expect a lot from yourself, you hold yourself to a high standard. I think that self-love and that self-esteem, that so many people talk about, that's not a place that many people would take it. So I think that that's a cool place to start. It's interesting that you see your, I guess, expectations of others, maybe demandingness, whatever, stemming from your love and respect for them. I'll go further. Like I try to maintain a framework that, like, this is a child of Heavenly Father, whoever I'm encountering, whether they know it or not, whether they want to believe that or not, whether they, choose to believe that or not. That's how I try to see people. And when you see that, when you see people in that light, uh, it gives you an instant, of course, love and respect, I think, for anyone, because we're all the same. We're all
Totally.
equal in that way.
Wow.
On the other hand, it's interesting. You should hold them to a high standard. They're children of God and creators themselves. I mean, they call you a creator on YouTube. I find that really interesting, by the way. They call people that do what you do creators. Is there any higher expression
Yeah.
of godliness than creating?
I appreciate the title creator because that's why I do what I do. That's what I love to do, is to create. Because sometimes there's also the title of influencer, and I absolutely dislike that. Like, that's
Yeah.
not why I'm doing what I do. I'm not trying to like influence people or get people to shop certain things or whatever. I'm just trying to more so create and inspire rather than influence.
All right. So I was curious. Let me take it here. So you were so as I've observed you as an adult, as I've seen you, raise your family and do so publicly and live your life pretty publicly in a lot of ways, on film, on YouTube, social media. Uh, I'm curious because knowing your background as an entrepreneur probably had to be hard driving, demanding. You talked about that. As a competitive soccer player, as a collegiate level soccer player, because I coach soccer for my kids. I played soccer up through high school anyway. And, you put me on the side of a field, you put me on the field, I get pretty intense. So I was having a hard time imagining Garrett uh, as an intense competitive soccer player when you strike me, so gentle, so loving, kind. I'm curious about that. How would do you like what, how do you reconcile that?
I'm gonna expose myself, and any like sweet, kind persona you had of me is about to perhaps
No,
be
it's good.
tarnished and go down the drain.
Let's
Um,
hear it.
okay, so I on the soccer field am insanely competitive,
Mm,
and I absolutely want to win, and I want my teammates to win. But I'm not just like so competitive that I'm gonna like try my hardest and become really like emotionally intense and trash talk. It's to the higher level. It's the higher level understanding that
yeah.
if you truly want to win and you truly want control of this game, the most important thing perhaps is to be so emotionally mature, emotionally in control, that you keep your wits about you. So if you
Mm,
were on the sideline and you saw us playing, you would think that I am calm and I am chill and I am cool and I am, if anything, becoming friends with the person I'm playing against. But that's because I know that if I yell at you, it's going to trigger something in you and you're going to come harder at me. I don't want that. I want to defeat you. I don't want you to come harder at me. I want to defeat you. So the first thing I would do every soccer game is I'd walk up to that half field line. I'm a striker. I'd walk up to that half field line before kickoff. I'd reach out my hand, shake your hand, and say, I'm excited to play against you. What's your name? And they would immediately just be like, whoa, like, who is this guy? And I'd get to
wow.
know their name. I'd ask them questions about them. We were buddies within 5 seconds before
What?
the ball is even kicked off. We are buddies. We are friends. And there's no way you're going to slide tackle me or come for my ankles during this game because I'm your buddy. I'm your friend.
Wow.
And that's how competitive I was on the soccer field.
You are a weirdo. I cannot believe that. That is like the craziest answer I would have ever. That's what I was wondering about. Because like your demeanor, I'm like, I'm having a hard time seeing this guy like just wanting to crush people on the soccer field. And look, that's me projecting, right? Like, and it just shows you how different we are. Like, uh, highly emotional, highly competitive. when I'm in that realm. And the last thing I'm doing is trying to make friends with you. So
I
what
mean,
like
and
a
it's just, yeah,
squeeze it?
the people who sometimes it'll backfire. I just remember recently, because now I play in like a men's league in Hawaii, and I play in a
Mhm.
co-ed league, just trying to get soccer and competition in my life any way I can. And let's say you're playing and you make a bad pass or you have a bad shot, and your own teammates are razzing you and getting mad at you for it. I'll very loud and vocally have your back, so that your own team knows, like, oh, they're being jerks and this guy on the other team is standing up for our player, whatever. It's
Wow.
all these mind games to get you on
That
my
is
side.
so
That's where I want you.
weird. Yeah, it's like the weirdest. I love it. I'm not, when I say weird, I mean it as a term of endearment. Like, but that is a very, and it's cool that you recognize and think of it as a strategy and as, like you said, like a higher level of competitiveness because you're playing mind games in a
Oh,
different way
my
than
opponents
even most people
absolutely
think
hate it.
they're
Hawaii is a small enough island that we play the same teams over and over and over. I am just, without a doubt, I hate to admit it, but I am the most hated player in that league.
really,
Yeah.
even though you're so kind and
Yes,
but it's
hey,
almost
it's
like,
not
yeah, it's like kill him with kindness. Oh
We're
man,
always
that's
friends
so
after the
weird.
game. Man, they hate playing against me. Absolutely hate it, and I understand why.
Well, you're probably really good, right? So there's that.
That adds to it.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. That's fascinating. Like what a weird combination of strengths and
I
traits.
was actually talking to my brother um, about this the other day. If there was something that the world was just in so much need of, I think it would be emotional maturity. It's crazy to me how, I think these adult sports leagues are the perfect
Mm,
example. How often you see fights and arguments and people just losing their cool and tempers. It's crazy. Every time I'm like, man,
yeah.
you've been on this planet for a really long time and you haven't been able to control your
Yeah.
emotions and your temper. That's a crazy thing to me, and it's just a major weakness. And
Yeah,
I
let's
think it's
let's
something that people need to be more aware of so that they can work on it better.
I agree. Let's talk about that for a minute because look, the reality is uh I like I said, I had this epiphany at a young age, but it didn't mean that I was fixed. I mean, I have spent my whole life and I continue to praying for strength, praying, to be loving, trying to develop just more real time. Uh, what's the right word? Presence, right? Living
Mm-hmm.
present, seeing the person in front of me. Not texting while they're talking, making eye contact. Like I work on this, and maybe for you, aspects of that come naturally. Maybe they don't. I think that I perceive you the way I perceive you. I think a lot of people probably perceive you similarly because you carry yourself in the way that you carry yourself on film and whatnot. And so much of your life is on film. That's unique. Uh, but you know, I think that we live in a time when too many people say, "Well, that's just the way I am,"
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, it's almost like politically incorrect to want to be anything other than who you are at your core. And I think like for me, I don't believe in that. I recognize who I am. I recognize where my tendencies are, but I am always trying to frankly be a better person. Like however you want to say that, and then you're judging. Then you're already moral, right? You're already into morality. Like, well, what's
Mm-hmm.
better?
Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm telling you what I believe. I believe that love matters.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we begin the book that way. And I believe things that matter have to be sought after. They may come naturally to some than others, but for me, it's a real challenge to be a loving person.
Well, and I think you're exactly right that it varies the amount that it comes natural to someone versus others. But I think most importantly, you're right that anybody and everybody has the ability to learn that and make it a part of who they are. For
Yeah.
me, I grew up the majority of my life just very shy and naturally introverted. And it got to a point where I just finally like admitted to myself, life is going to be better as an extrovert than an introvert. But that's not something, of all the things, I think that's naturally, you're either naturally an introvert or naturally an extrovert. And I think part of the definition of that is when you're around a lot of people, that either gives you energy or it sucks the energy out of you. And that's like defined almost to your core and your DNA. But being naturally down to my DNA, an introvert, it just got to a point where I'm like, you know what, I'm going to miss out on a lot of life. So I need to just learn the ways of an extrovert. And so I think to a lot of people, the outward impression I give off is that I'm a confident extrovert, but I'm telling you, it drains me when I need to be turn that on, just because it's naturally not who I am. And so, yeah, just to kind of like prove your point that you can choose who you want to be and work on it and learn and grow in that way.
Look, you in a short, few comments on this podcast have gone right to the heart of so many matters that I think are fundamental, not just like, oh, these are good life principles. Like I have said in numerous occasions, and if you read my whole book, you'd see this mentioned. I read a book early on in my career as an entrepreneur called Emotional Intelligence. Daniel Goleman, you probably read the book, or that phrase was coined back in the early 2000s, late 90s by Daniel. And it's become part of the lexicon, like emotional intelligence. And whenever I was asked in some circle, like what's the secret to success, or something like that, that's been my answer for 20 years now. Emotional intelligence. And like everything that you've said so far on this podcast almost comes back, if I can boil it down, like you said, emotional maturity. But it begins, and even your first comment about your expectations of people, it begins with understanding who you are and then modulating based on your understanding of yourself. Like the fact that you recognize you're an introvert and made a conscious decision to trying to develop extroverted behaviors, that is a super high level behavior to begin with. Because just the act of being emotionally intelligent enough to recognize that and being honest about it, and then being emotionally mature enough to want to make some changes so you can be more successful in however you want to define success, as you just articulated, that is like super high level. So I'm curious, Garrett, like where did you develop this emotional maturity and this consciousness of living that now expresses itself to millions on YouTube in the way that you live your life? Like, that's pretty bold. Mm-hmm. But have you always been that adept, or did that come, were there any turning points in your life that helped you develop in this way?
I do think a large part of it could be credited to like turning points in my life. And this is the part of my own story that I don't love, because when I say turning point, there was a period in my life where my parents had divorced. My dad got remarried to an abusive stepmom, or she became very abusive. And it was just the hardest, darkest years of my life. And why I dislike that is because I want to believe that people can just like change and evolve and grow without having to go through like the depths of any sort of, misery, abuse, hell, and whatever sort. But at least for me, that was it. And it's a very like triggering thing, that like sparked a lot of the change, just because once you experience hate, like true hate, I think that's when you're triggered to either jump on the team of hate or just go hard the other direction. And, so I say I dislike that just because I think of my own kids and I want them to have full love and emotional intelligence and maturity and empathy and kindness and all those good things to the fullest. And I'm hoping that they can learn those without having to go through tragedy, right? You know what I mean? And so it's this weird balance of like, I'm trying to be the best dad that ever was. And so unfortunately, my kids won't have the amazing teacher that was my evil stepmom. You know what I mean? Because so much of what I learned from her in a very weird way. Wow. Even to the point where sometimes people, with through their like therapy or through their own experiences recommend like, oh, you never want to like hold on to that You want to just only forgive and just completely get out of your system. And I'm like kind of on the other side of that opinion, saying, I don't know, it has motivated me on the daily to just be a
Wow.
more better loving person. So why would I get rid of that? If I'm okay with that little bit of pain and baggage on my shoulders, and it makes me and everyone around me like better, I'm okay with that burden. I'm going to go ahead and keep
Wow.
carrying that as long
Me
as it
too.
continues to do more good than it does negative in my life.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That's really personal and interesting. Let me push further because recently, we gather these tidbits of wisdom. We read books. We watch bits on Instagram. Who knows what? And I saw this discussion around. There's a popular theory right now that there is this level of trauma that kids that helps kids thrive. And of course, like probably what you experience, the way you describe it, is beyond that point, right? Like abusive, like that's not it. But however you want to define trauma, it can come in many forms, right? It could come in, I don't know, really challenging physical endeavors or something. It could come in really stern parenting, or hopefully not to the point that it's abusive, like you described. But like sometimes, do you ever worry? And this is a sincere question. Do you ever worry that raising kids in just an envelope of joy and love and good times won't produce? Because you're wildly successful, Garrett. You built companies, you've sold them, you've parlayed your, I don't know, hobby and exploration of the world into a career that probably nets you millions on top of that and gives you all kinds of other access, right? Like you've been wildly successful in life at a young age. Do you ever worry that so much love might not produce the same results in your children? I know that's a wild thing to say, but it's a
No,
sincere question.
1000%, 1000%. That is exactly the issue that I was expressing. And you know what made me realize, like even as you were explaining that, it made me realize so much of why I parent the way I do, because I just can't help it but just pour all the love I have onto my kids, right? That's just how I'm going to parent them no matter what. But knowing that to coddle them or comfort them, give them too much of a comfortable life, better said, could definitely be detrimental to them. That's why, like, if people could see behind the curtains how we live our lives, just how frugally we live our lives, because yeah, we're traveling to these extravagant places, but like, ask me the last time we went into a store and I let my kids buy a toy, and
Mm.
and what their Christmases look like. And so just like that level of frugality, but also
Mm.
again, you could mistakenly make the observation that my kids are on a never-ending vacation, but
Yeah.
you know, plop an average child into their situation and just see how hard they work, how much they're pushed on a daily basis. And I
Yeah.
think if I were to try to explain myself as a parent, that's what I'm attempting to do, because they're not
Mm.
going to have the trauma of a hateful father. They were stuck with a very loving father. I've got to
Yeah.
give them these challenges in other ways. So I'm going to give them physical challenges and mental challenges and emotional, where we're in a new country every other week and they're needing to
Yeah.
make new friends out on the playground. That's scary,
Totally.
especially with language barriers and new cultures. And they're doing that on a weekly basis. And so I'm constantly trying to help my kids build that strength and that like confidence in them, knowing that it's going to serve them the rest of their life. And I need to do it in these uplifting ways, since they're not going to get it in a hateful parent traumatic way.
Wow. So well said. And as I observe, one of the things that you do that I also have embraced, even though I got into it at such a late age, is surfing. And on the outside, surfing is one of these things that looks like. And by the way, with my kids is what I mean.
Hmm.
Like I'm not that interested in surfing on my like I mean like I love surfing or whatever, but like I love skiing. I grew up skiing, but to be honest with you, if I have a free day, I'm not going to go skiing unless it's with my kids. Like it's
Right.
only fun for me.
Hmm.
For that, I'm not, you know, whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But my point is this: surfing's terrifying at times. You
Uh-huh.
know, you get thrown underwater, you get smashed on a reef, into the, you know, there's animal like there's wind, there's waves, there's chaos, there's cords around your neck. Things happen. And I love surfing for that reason, for my kids, I mean, and for me. I love dirt biking for that reason. They're heavy, they're loud, they're scary. And even though on the outside it's just play, I think that we can choose to play in ways that you know, causes us a little trauma, causes us to get hurt, causes our kids, puts our kids in a little bit of peril, hopefully not life threatening, you know. And then, of course, the traveling thing. I mean, not a lot of people can identify at the level that you guys go, but there's no question. Like, you know, that is a form of trauma for
I
those
think
kids
surfing,
moving
like
around like that.
surfing is the perfect example of that. Like it is such a big part of our lives right now. And I selfishly, as a father, love taking my kids surfing. My favorite days are when I wake them up well before the sun rises. I like literally carry their sleeping bodies into the car, drive them to the surf break, and they wake up as the sun rises, like already out in the water. No better way to start your day. But when we're out surfing, it's such like, oh my gosh, the amount of attention, they have my full attention and I have their full attention. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's more and more rare these days, right? And so it's just such a special thing. And like you said, the element of danger, a good majority of our surf sessions include tears. And not wanting to ever like spoil the sport or like break their spirits, I'm totally okay with that. Like healthy amount of tears and fears, like I'm right there with them. And yeah, I think it's just so good for the soul. Our parenting style, my wife and I are fortunately on the same page. You could consider it very strict and definitely high expectations, and there's just a lot of tears, but at least the tears are coming from like a place of love and a place of like
Mm-hmm.
emotional control rather than the other side.
I love that. I love that. And I totally condone. Look, I don't think kids need to be happy every moment of the day in the sense that, you know, like I think there are plenty of ways that we can parent them actively that may not make them happy in the moment, but that are the right ways to raise kids. And I think there's just so much of that that's gone by the way because look, for lots of good intentions, right? People wanting to give their kids the best and never, you know, say no. But the truth is, so I think you've reconciled that really well. And I think that that study on trauma, you know, this there's this fine line, there's this level of trauma, to use that word broadly, that develops character. And without it, people don't develop the character. They may have a fun, happy, enjoyable life. And so I love that, you know, you find the trauma in other ways, right? Other than being a tyrant. And so, well said. Um, so you've traveled the whole world, which is something that most people will never get to do. And you've seen every culture and walk of life, and you've got to do it with your family. How do you reflect on your observation for this idea, this love matters, right? As you've maybe expanded your observations of the world and of people and of peoples. Anything to learn from that?
100%. Somebody just in Antarctica recently made the comment to us. And it was interesting because they talked about it when it came to the glaciers and icebergs that are melting and the wildlife. They said, we're so glad that you had the opportunity to come to Antarctica and witness this because you care about what you know about. Better, you know, the more you know about something, the more you're going to care about something. And it's
Mm.
100% true. Now that we've experienced the glaciers and the icebergs, like we care deeply about everything that's happening in that region of the world because we better know about it and have experienced it. And when they said that, yeah, they were talking about wildlife and glaciers, but my wife and I immediately look at each other and realize that's what so much of our travels have been about, whether we knew it going into it or not. As we've got to know each and every culture that we've traveled to around the world, we've just developed this love for humans everywhere. And it's because we've been fortunate enough to get to know them. And so that's been a big part of our hope and effort as we've shared our journey on Instagram and YouTube and everywhere else, is that, hey, if we can help you guys better get to know these different cultures, I'd almost hope that there's two things. Is one, hopefully it motivates people to get outside their comfort zone and go experience more of these cultures themselves, but not everyone can do that. So then hopefully the second goal is hopefully through our videos, people just learn an added appreciation and love for humans everywhere.
I love that. So two big takeaways at least, right? Seek out trauma in hopefully healthy ways for you and maybe your children, your family, and you care about what you know about. Did I say that right?
Yeah. You know what this all goes back to? This all goes back to the soccer field when I would introduce myself to my opponent, because if they know me, they're not going to slide tackle me.
I might have. No, man, it's so good, and I love that you see that not as some just unique trait of Garrett, but you see that as like your way of competing and of playing head games, which as you put it, might be above the typical head games of just razzing and crap talking. Wow.
This guy, this English gentleman on the soccer field, just like a week ago in Hawaii, he came up to me, and it was one of the funniest, best compliments of my life. He goes, "You know what? I've never met someone who's so good at trash talking without saying a single curse word." It's like, thank you, my friend.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, any in the spirit of "Let me save you 25 years," right? The name of the podcast, the name of the book. Any advice you'd give someone younger, starting out, how to save them a lesson or two, particularly as it might pertain to this topic or any other?
Yeah, it's like top of my mind right now, and that I'm focused on with my own kids. And so if I were giving like my most important advice to my own kids, then it might be relevant for anyone out there, is that I'm trying to help them understand that to love and have conversations and just have a relationship with somebody in person is 1,000 million times better than anything over social media or online. And, my life right now is so deeply online that I feel like I'm the perfect person to be able to understand this, being like, look, I have lived social media life to the fullest, to the best. I would argue there's few people who have experienced it at the level I have. And so please listen to me when I say it's not as good as the real thing. Relationships, friendships, love, offline is 1,000 times better. So while it might continue to become more and more ingrained in our lives and more impressive, just know and remember it's better, the real thing, real life.
This is so good. This is Garrett Gee, the Bucket List family, telling you, if I can speak for you, put your phone down, stop watching his family, and love your own. And this is why, Garrett, I love, we're different people, different, businesses, whatever you want to call it. But, our message at Lovesac, our entire stated purpose has evolved over time, because we make these couches that last forever, right? And it started with the bean bags, but now we make these couches that you can have the rest of your life. Our stated purpose is to inspire humankind to buy better so they can buy less. And this is coming from a company that makes stuff, but we ultimately want you to buy less stuff. So
I love that.
In a weird way, we're saying the same thing, right? We both want people in a perfect world to take in less of our product and any product, focus on the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Love matters.
100%. Yep.
I love that. Well, you can follow Garrett as I do on Instagram at Garrett, 2 R's, 2 T's, 2 G-E-E, or of course, more broadly at the Bucket List Family, if you don't already. They are an inspiration to observe, truly. Please don't forget to subscribe to this podcast or video, and please give it a star rating. Every little bit makes a huge difference. I have no advertisers, just putting this out there into the world to hopefully do some good. Maybe share it out on social media. Help save others a chunk off their 25-year journey just because you're that good of a friend. Thank you so much to the A-list adventurer, the ringleader of roamers, the dean of daddom, and a generally kind, gentle, authentic, good person and great example to so many, Mr. Garrett Gee. Thank you.
I appreciate you.
And to everyone listening, remember, if you can never lose sight of that most powerful word, concept, idea, ideal in the world, LOVE, it's all about love. It just might save you 25 years.